Hey everyone, before we get started, just a bit of the boring stuff. The information contained on this podcast is general in nature and does not take into account your personal situation. You should consider whether the information is appropriate to your needs and, where appropriate, seek professional advice from a financial advisor. Now on with the episode.
If you want to ask a question but you feel like it's stupid, just ask. You're talking about $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. Like, it's not $5 at Macca's. You know, you're not deciding whether you want a caramel latte or a hazelnut. You're deciding on a $500,000 investment. So ask your questions, trust your gut, fight for what you want. You've got to be not a jerk, but you've got to really put your foot down in some of these situations. I wish I'd done that more.
Hi, I'm Joe. I bought a house, and despite my experience in real estate, I still had a shitty experience. Apparently I'm not alone, so I've gathered the funniest and realest experts to teach Australia a better way to find their home. Welcome to the No BS Real Estate Podcast. Welcome everyone to the pilot episode of what we hope will be a podcast that's going to give you great value and help you when entering the market. In Season 1, we'll be talking about the steps to buying your first established home. Today on the show, I have Italian comedian, first-time home buyer and all-round good mate, Dee. Welcome, Dee, and thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you. What a great intro. Thank you for referring to me as an Italian comedian. Because it's facts, it's true.
That's it. You did a couple of comedy shows and I'm spewing I couldn't make it.
I might come out of retirement one day just for you.
Please, just once. So, Dee, I wanted to ask you this one question. If in 150 years science has failed to save us and all that is left is a book about your life, what would the title be and what would the blurb tell us about Dee?
The title would be All Shits and Giggles Until Someone Giggles and Shits. That would be the title. And the blurb would just be about the fact that I've made it to the age of 27 without shitting my pants yet and just how I've gone about that, I guess. That's it.
I love it.
I don't know what you wanted from me, but that's it. That's my life.
I feel like if you stocked it on the shelves, I'd buy it today.
All right. Well, I'll get working on that later today.
Yeah, please.
All right.
Dee, look, thank you for being here once again. So you've been stuck in lockdown past 2020 and 2021 with the rest of us in Melbourne. Mm-hmm. You got engaged. Congrats, by the way. Bought a house. And from what I know, it's been a bit of a journey. What is your story and how did you enter the market?
So we entered the market last year in the height of the shit show that 2020 was. And it just, honestly, it started off with me saving money, both of us, because obviously, you know, being in lockdown, I wasn't going out, gym memberships were suspended, all of that. And I was like, holy cow, I'm rich. What do I do with this? And yeah, I just thought about it. I was like, the market's looking pretty good. Got this money that I'm not doing anything with. And so honestly, I just reached out to a broker and I was like, right, this is how much we got. What do we do? Where do we start? What can I buy? Can we buy? Is it too soon? Or like, I just kind of threw a bunch of questions at her. Yeah, that's pretty much where it started, to be honest. And it just, escalated real quick from there.
Oh, look, it sounds pretty typical for a lot of journeys that I've heard so far. You know, when you and your partner Dylan decided to buy your first home, did you guys already have the savings done or did you guys have to come up with a plan to save before you entered the market?
Look, there was money there, but I was very cautious that I was like, you know what, I don't want to bleed the accounts dry. There's going to be things that will come up that we will have no idea about. I, didn't want to go in and buy a house and then have absolutely no money. So we did sort of knuckle down a bit and really focused on having a strict budget, being really careful where our money was going, foregoing some things as well. Yeah, I'd say that's where we started. But for the most part, we did have savings there. Yeah.
And that's really good. Not everyone's in that same position, I guess, you know, that they already have some money saved or put away. So it's good that you actually had that experience. I want to sort of get into your background and what you learned. So tell me a little bit more about your experience. So you built a property and that's how you entered the market. How was that experience for you?
Oh, it was a roller coaster. It was really exciting. You know, if you'd asked me 2 years ago where I thought my life would be, I thought we'd probably still be renting. We may or may not have killed each other by that point. Like, I didn't didn't think we would be in a home. Like it was so out of reach. So it was really exciting and kind of like pinch me moment to go, oh my God, I'm actually building a house. I can actually put holes in my wall. I don't have to deal with landlords and property managers driving me up the wall. But we did have, as you know, we did have some, well, they're not even hiccups. Like I would call them straight out burps with a bit of vomit, just big issues along the way. In the end, it's worked out. But overall experience, I give it an 8 out of 10, maybe a 7 out of 10. Let's go with
7 out of 10.
Yeah, like it's just that little. It's positive, but
Yeah, not a 10. And the rental side of things would have been hard coming out of that. And I guess this is a really good segue to come into our topic for today. So what I wanted to ask you is your top 10 things you wish you knew before you bought a home. Starting from the top, what would be your number one?
Number one, I would say invest in a good broker. Make sure that you gel with them, that they're experienced, that they get good results. Because, yeah, that was a big part of our journey, making sure that I had a good relationship with them and that they were happy to answer all 10,000 of our questions as well.
Did you have like a few brokers, or was it just the one you sort of picked the right one from the start?
Just the one.
Oh, awesome.
I didn't realise looking around for a broker was even a thing. I thought you would just pick someone and that was it. So I guess, again, luck. We just ended up with a good one.
You sound like you had a good experience with them.
Yeah, no, our broker was really, really good. She was, always available. She explained things, I remember there was a couple of things that she had to explain to me about, no joke, 10 times. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I really should just write this down. Yeah, but no, she was really, really good, almost like a friend. And that's a big thing for me. No matter what kind of thing I'm booking, I always make sure I go with somebody that I click with and have a good relationship with, because the more that you have that friendship, the easier things will be. You can be a lot more honest. You can understand each other better. So that was a big thing for us, I think.
And makes complete sense, if you can get along with the person that's, handling all your money and your finances, like that's, and your biggest asset entering the market, it's pretty important. So, I'd agree, invest in a good broker at 100%. What would be your number two?
Number two would be fixed versus variable when we're talking about rates.
All right, so break it down for us. What is fixed and what is variable?
I honestly still don't understand. No, fixed is I still ask myself every day. No, fixed is you fix your rate. So if you get a loan and your rate is 2%, you fix it for a term. So it could be a year, it could be 2 years, it could be 4 years, however long. It is fixed at that rate. So if the market goes, if the rates go up and down, you're fixed to that 2%. But, and I think this is correct, you can't redraw. There's no redraw facility.
So there's a few terms and conditions that come with having a fixed rate.
Yeah. So that was like, I guess, the downside of having fixed. And variable is exactly that. It varies. So you might start off your loan at 2%, but then if the rates go up to 2.5 or if they come back down to 1.8 or whatever, your rates will go along with that. So you have sort of no control, I guess, over what the rate's going to do. Your repayments will shuffle around. But again, if I'm correct, it does have redraw, which is really handy to have. Like if you plan on, paying more off your mortgage or, chipping into your principal versus just paying your rates kind of thing. It's good if you want to redraw to go on holiday, or it might be medical things that you need to pay for or whatever. So it's handy to have that. So
so you can actually use those funds is what you're sort of getting at with the redraw
That's
facility.
My understanding, yeah.
Yeah. And when you were making the decision for fixed versus variable, was that your broker that sort of guided you on how to do that, or did you have to research it a little bit yourself?
No, that was my mum. She was
there you
go. My mum is approximately 200 years old, and so she was kicking around when the rates were up at like 20%. So she kept saying to me, she goes, we're in the middle of a pandemic. You don't know what the rates are going to do. What if it goes up to 17%? Rah, rah, rah. So she said, fix as much of it as you can. So we originally, from memory, a lot changed. We originally said 70% fixed, 30% variable as a general rule. Just I wanted that little bit of a redraw available if we need it. You don't know what life's going to throw at you. But I think in the end, with all of the kerfuffle and whatnot, we've ended up with completely variable. So,
oh, wow.
In the process of refinancing at the moment. So I'll get back to you on how all that goes.
You'll have to give us an update on the next one.
Yeah, when I speak to the broker again, I'll make sure that I clarify fixed and variable in terms of redraw, and I'll get back to you unless you have a broker on the show.
Well, I didn't actually realise that you could do part of your loan as fixed and then the other part as variable. I didn't actually realise that.
Yeah, no, you can. I mean, I just asked because in my mind, I'm one of those people that likes to pay for the best, prepare for the worst, which fun. But yeah, I just said to the broker, I was like, can we do that? And she goes, yeah, that's fine. So that's, it's a thing.
Well, that's a good tip. That's even one I've learnt today. So I think a lot of people out there probably didn't know or might not realise. So that's really awesome to know that.
There you go.
Yeah. And your number 3.
Number 3, I would have loved to understood borrowing power. That was a term that got thrown around a lot. Didn't really understand it. Still don't fully understand it.
I was going to say, how do you feel about it now? Do you sort of get it a little bit better now or not, or still sort of you just have an understanding?
A very basic understanding, like there's only so much you can borrow up to. It depends on, I think, your income versus your expenses versus, all of that stuff. So just as a rough example, I'm probably not the best person to ask for an example, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. But I guess, if it was me on my own, just me with just my income, wanting to borrow, 400 grand for a house, unless I was on really good money with no debts, no nothing, very minimal outgoings, it'd be really hard to get. You'd have to have a pretty heavy deposit, whereas add another person into it, it's easier to save when you've got a second person. So, that's the gist. But I didn't really have to worry about it because there was 2 of us. It wasn't too big of an issue. But it was just a term that got thrown around a lot and I had no idea what it meant. So that is why it's number 3.
How do you think that would have actually changed your experience from the one you had?
It's really hard to say because I still don't fully understand it. I think the only way it may have impacted, if we'd have saved a bit more, because our deposit was quite low. I think if we'd have saved a bit more, our LMI would have been lower, which we'll probably get to at some point, but LMI probably would have been lower. I don't know if it would have affected the interest rates. Potentially, like if we got to an 80% LVR, it would have made a difference to our rate, interest rate and stuff. So, I reckon that's how it probably would have played the biggest role, is in that sense.
And it does impact a lot of things you do when you're trying to borrow money. I know, from a few experiences I've heard, it's one of those things that can be quite, if you don't understand it at the time, you're sort of just buying the dream and, being sold the dream and then realising all the other costs that go along with it. And it can be quite damaging for some people, or income or costs. So I definitely agree putting that at number 3.
Yes.
And what would be your 4th one?
Look at more than just the street name when you're picking your block or picking your home. So as you mentioned, we built our first home. And we knew what estate we wanted to build in, and so the developer gave us a map of the stage that was up for sale and whatever. And I just looked and I was like, oh, that's a cute street name. Let's go with that. And I looked on the street and I was like, oh, that block looks all right. Whatever. We'll just pop a deposit on that. I didn't even go. We didn't visit the block. Nothing. Didn't look at it.
So you bought off the plan.
Yeah, well, I don't know why. I mean, look, it worked out well. That's great. It's fantastic. But whatever, she'll be right. Honestly, this build, she'll be right was just the theme of the whole build, to be honest. But I would definitely suggest paying attention, because I look back now and I'm like, the block next door to us, they've got, what are those things? It's kind of like a crossover, but it's not. It's got
crossover.
It's like, the driveway bit crossover, but it's not. It's slimmer and it's got dots on it. It's just, I don't know what it's for. I think maybe for bikes to get up onto the footpath, I guess.
Why do I feel like I'm in some sort of game show?
Maybe.
I have no idea.
I have one of those things. So we'll just say a obstruction on the nature strip. Okay. Let's just learn it that way, shall we? Yeah, it had that. It also had the fibre optic pit or whatever it's called. It had that, it had multiple things on its nature strip. And I was like, holy guacamole, we were lucky we didn't get any of that. So we could have our house positioned, either way. We could have the driveway either way. So if I'd have gone, gone one block over, we would have had all these obstructions and the house would have been positioned differently and whatever. And what was the other thing? Retaining walls, because we've got retaining walls where we are. Our block just came with them, and these are concrete retaining walls. So they cost tens of thousands of dollars that we didn't have to pay. It was already part of our block. Whereas our neighbours across the road, extra 30 grand worth of retaining walls because theirs didn't have it. So, yeah, could have really gone belly up. So I would definitely suggest, don't be that blasé when you're looking for a property.
It's a fun way to pick your home, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a cute street name and I still get a lot of comments on it. So, win-win.
What would be your fifth one?
Fifth one would be read your damn contract. Read it. Back to front, read it while you're on. Read it? I said read it. Read it when you're going to bed at night. Read it when you're on the toilet. Read it when you're on your lunch break. Just pick it up because, especially, I mean, I personally haven't seen an established contract, what you get with those, or Section 32s are so hard to understand. So, that's what conveyances are for, I guess. But our build contract, honestly, they're heavy. There's a lot to go through and it's so easy to miss things. But because of how particular I was and how many times I read my contract, I ended up picking up on something that saved us $9,000.
Oh, my God. So, what was it that you picked up on, if you don't mind me asking?
So basically what happened, there was a big delay in getting our site costs back and I had the bank breathing down our necks going, we need a contract. So we were breathing down the builder's necks going, we need a contract. And so our sales consultant locked in our site costs, I think at like $15K. That was done, signed, sealed, delivered, got the loan, And then a few weeks later, I get a call from our pre-site and she goes, our site costs have come back and they're like an extra $9,000. And I was like, yeah, that's nice. I was like, well, my contract says fixed price, like fixed site cost. I said, so go have a chat to your legal team. You get back to me with a good answer. If I hadn't have read that, if I hadn't have, made sure it was in writing and checked it and did all of that before signing anything, she could have, just turned around and been like, it's an extra 9K and we would have had to go and, redo the loan and all of that. So because, I'd read that thing so many times, I knew it was fixed site because I remember saying I want fixed pricing for this reason. So it really pays, and pick up on mistakes. Windows in the bathrooms were supposed to be frosted, privacy glass.
Yeah.
And just through reading the contract and the plans and that, I picked up that they weren't and managed to sneak it in at the last second. So just off the top of my head, they're the things that I know of. But, it's full on, but it's so important to read it and so important to know your contract through and through and make sure that everything you want and everything you need is in there and keep annoying them until you get your way.
Kudos to you for picking up on those issues as well because, it is your house at the end of the day and you want to make sure you're doing the right things and it's so easy to miss these little things that, especially when you're caught up in that excitement, right? Like it's one of those things where you're pumped and you want to buy your house, you want to build your house, you don't care about all the other little things. And I think that's where a lot of people get swept away and they're not checking, sometimes. And that's awesome that you did that. And I think it's a really good piece of advice. And just wanted to ask on that, was your conveyancer someone that actually read your contracts for you or did you just sort of read them yourselves?
So bit of column A, bit of column B. So this is something else that we learnt along the way. Conveyancers only do your Section 32s. That's right. It. Your HIA, so if you're building your HIA, like your big build contract, they don't read them, which I was horrified to find out. I was like, what do you mean? I was like, I don't understand this. That was, anyone listening, please jot that down. Conveyancers don't read your build contract.
So what did you do to sort of get the HIA contract read or did you just have to do it yourselves and sort of trust your gut?
I just read it myself. But I was quite fortunate. So I started like an Instagram page for our build just to sort of, document the journey and that. And through that, I got connected with a lot of people in the same journey. So, they would post about this and that and change this and do that and rah. And so through that community, that's where a lot of the stuff I know now was from that. So it kind of helped me in reading the contract. And I remember sitting there with Dylan and reading it. And I was like, you need to read it. I need to read it. Now I need to read it again. And just after a while, you start to understand the jargon. You just have to break it down piece by piece. But as far as a professional person to read it, I don't know. I don't know whether that's something a solicitor would do. To my understanding, there's not, like when I reached out on Insta. Yeah. So, just make sure you got time to sign your contract so you can read it.
But how's that like, going through that community of Instagram? Like I've seen a lot of the build pages and they're huge. Some of them, they've got big followers and a lot of people on them and sharing information. And I personally think that's great because, that's how you make some of your decisions. At the end of the day, people have done your same build. Like some people have the same property that you're about to embark on and you can see all the things they've picked out and you're like, oh, actually that doesn't suit me or that looks awesome. We need to do that.
Yeah.
Or even just sharing tips and advice.
Yeah, it was, I definitely suggest, like, if there's anyone, even if you are buying established, it's still handy to have, even if it's your own personal account, follow reno pages, follow any kind of build page, because even though if you're buying your own home, you might want to change handles on something, you might want to change tapware, you might want to change your blinds and things like that. And there's a lot of things that you wouldn't think about. So having that extra, it could be following 10 people, it could be 1,000 people. It's really, really eye-opening. It's also a curse at the same time because I see all these beautiful homes. I'm like, why didn't I do that? Just instant regret. But it's very handy for knowledge. And, I've helped people have helped me. Very, very helpful to have that extra bit of knowledge behind you.
And what would be your number 6?
Number 6 would be trust your gut. I hadn't done it before, but at the same time, logic is logic. If something doesn't feel right to you, if you want to ask a question but you feel like it's stupid, just ask. You're talking about $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. Like, it's not $5 at Macca's. You're not deciding whether you want a caramel latte or a hazelnut. You're deciding on a $500,000 investment. So ask your questions, trust your gut, fight for what you want. You've got to be not a jerk, but you've got to really put your foot down in some of these situations. So I wish I'd done that more.
I would totally agree with that. Listen to your gut, trust your gut, because it always tells you if something's wrong.
Exactly right. Yep. If your brain's not working, your gut is.
And what would be your number 7?
Number 7 would be think about fad versus investment.
Oh, break that down. What do you mean by that?
So when we were with our house, there are some things, I would have loved. Me personally, look, Dylan's just here. He's got his gaming room. He doesn't give a shit about much else with the house, right? So I was running the show mostly. So me personally, I was loving and still do love my matte blacks. I love my matte black handles. Tapware, sinks, all of that, beautiful, love the look of it. But we decided to stick with the chrome because this isn't our forever home. Our goal with this house was to make as much of it as possible down the line. So, you've got to look at, if it's a forever home, knock yourself out, go nuts, like paint your walls pink, I don't care. But if it's a home that, you're hoping to make money off, think about what you're doing in it. Think about your, what's going to attract, what's going to help it sell. We looked at our floor plan. Our floor plan
Nice. Nailed it.
Thank you. Good save. It's in my opinion, it's, super versatile. It's good. Like, it's just Dylan and I at the moment, but if we had kids, they'd fit. It's got 2 living rooms. It's great, whatever. We were very careful with the floor plan that we picked. Been very careful here. We raised the ceiling to give the home a light and more bigger feel. We knew that would be an attractive thing. Stone bench tops, we know that will attract. The layout of the garden even, like we haven't finished, but when planning our landscaping, we made it super, what's the word? I don't know. Whatever. You can do a lot with it, okay? It's good bit of everything.
I think we got the gist.
Yeah. So all of that stuff, whereas, fads like, I don't know, what is a fad at the moment?
I think the chrome one is definitely chrome versus the matte black finishes.
That's a big one.
That's a big one at the moment, I've noticed. A couple of things like with floors and things like that I've noticed as well, just in terms of colour or feature walls that are sort of going out.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a big one. We even, we're looking at, the panelling that's really in at the moment, that VG, whatever it's called. I'd love to do that to at least one room in the house, like the master or something, because I love the look of it. But in my mind, I'm like, but it's not a forever home. Will everyone love that? Maybe not. So, even this was another thing that I'd like to touch on quickly is the orientation of the home.
Oh, yes.
Where it's facing. Think about your house and your floor plan and how it's going to sit where your block is facing and make sure it's going to let in a lot of light and whatnot. If you go and position your house wrong, it's going to be dark, it's going to be miserable, and put a lot of people off. So just little things like that. Got to think.
No, for sure. I think that's a really good point. I like that. FAD versus investment, very big decision to make if you know if it's your forever home or not. And what would be your number 8?
Number 8, I touched on this earlier. So understanding LVR and LMI.
LVR and LMI. Break it down for everyone.
So they're acronyms for loan to value ratio and lender's mortgage insurance. So your lender's mortgage insurance is basically if you're borrowing more than 80% of what the home's value is, then the banks will charge you essentially an insurance just to cover them and make sure that you are able to pay that loan, because obviously they're lending you quite a lot of money. If they're lending up to 90, 95% of what your home's worth, they're pretty much lending you almost the whole amount for your house. So that's an extra 10 to 15,000 that you'll be paying over the term of your loan. So, I mean, it's one of those things, like if you can get a 20% deposit, awesome, really good. But we're also talking a 20% deposit on average is like 100 grand. So yeah, not a fan. I hope I explained that okay. Again,
did well.
Thank you. I tried really hard.
No, you did very well, I think. And look, it makes sense. I think that's a very important part to understand, especially that LMI part. You know, in terms of what you're spending, there are some limits that you hit when you're making an investment. And sometimes that changes through the course of your loan period. So if you applied for a loan originally, and let's say you are doing a build for those people listening out there, and you do a few add-ons to your initial loan and the price starts going up and the value starts going up, you might have planned not to have LMI, but then you go over a certain threshold, which is roughly over the 600,000, 605,000, and then you get hit with LMI. And the one way to get rid of that LMI can be to have a guarantor in some cases. So it's just, you can work with it and work around it if you're fortunate enough to know someone that can go guarantor. But if you can't, you then cop the fees attached with LMI. So something to be aware of.
And it's the same as refinancing too, because obviously that's our next step at the moment. So now it's a different ball game where our house value has gone up. Yeah, so our loan to value ratio could be where we were at 95%. It could be at around 80 now, which means when we refinance, hopefully we don't have LMI. So we'd be paying significantly less. Our rates would be lower, no LMI, so there's not an extra 10, 15K on our loan. So that's another way to look at it too. Big difference.
100% very good tip. And what would be your number 9? We're coming to the end now.
So apparently fence and nature strip disputes are not a council, police or legal matter. You're on your own.
Wow.
I learned this from personal experience.
Yeah, so talk me through what happened with your situation.
So we had the block next door to us say she hadn't started building yet or anything. And for whatever reason, she then decided to sell the block. So her and I had agreed on a fencer. I came to her with a couple of quotes because obviously we were way ahead of her, like we needed a fence. So I went to her, reached out to her, a couple of quotes. Yep, beautiful, happy, done. I was like, cool, it's booked for such and such date. Yep, no worries, awesome. So the date came, fence went up, looks great. And then I messaged her saying, hey, fence has gone up, invoice should be out in the next couple of days. And she was like, oh, I didn't know the fence was going up. I was like, well, you kind of did because I kind of told you. And we had a bit of a chit chat. And I was, because at this point we had a decent relationship, like friendly chats, talking about her selling her block and whatever. And then the conversation sort of ended. And I was like, so about the fence invoice, do still have to pay your half because we kind of agreed to it.
Yeah.
And it just turned into a bit of a dispute from there. She was claiming that she didn't agree to it, even though I had it in writing. Again, boys and girls, and need to make sure everything's in writing. Again, super important because I had all of this in writing. So pretty much everything she was trying to say was bull. And if I had to guess, I think it was just because we're selling the block, we're not living here anymore. I don't want to pay for something that's not really,
not really hers anymore.
Not really hers. I don't want to spend any more money on it than I need to, trying to get out of it kind of thing. That's how it came across to me. And yeah, and I was clearly very annoyed, and so I was like, oh, I feel like it's a council thing. Maybe I'll talk to the council, which they explained that no, fences aren't a council matter. You need to, it's not a council thing. So I spoke with Vic Pole. I was like, I feel like it's not them, but let's give it a whirl. They're like, no, it's pretty much a civil dispute. So then from there, I had to jump online. There was a bunch of articles, but cut a long story short, there's no set rule. There's no full proper law protecting you guys against this kind of stuff. So I could take it to VCAT. I could have done all of that, but it's not guaranteed that I was going to win. As much as I knew I was completely in the right. I had all of the evidence. It was in my mind that, it may not go my way, but I sort of politely just said to her, I was like, look, I've got everything in writing. If it needs to go to VCAT, I'm more than happy to go to VCAT. I'm happy to sue, and you can pay for the damages and everything as well, or you could just pay your $1,500. And that's what happened. So it worked out well in the end. She paid her share, and that was great. I thought she was going to vandalize our house or something else. Yeah. So, but it was, just added stress. It was also right around Christmas time too. So it's just what you need. So that was a big eye opener, because now there is a house being built there. So the block sold, and whatever, new owners, new builder, which is being built at the moment. And they damaged our newly laid turf on our section of the nature strip. And that was another thing that I learned that the council don't want anything to do with. So it was another thing, which again, luckily the builder was great about it. But yeah, if you're like me, I don't do too well with confrontation. I don't like people being mad at me. No one likes it. I can't
imagine that would be a common thing, but
I thrive off anger and hatred. But so it was just extra added stress. It's really frustrating that these things don't have a blanket rule or anything to hang on to. But, again, we know for next time. Hopefully there's no next time, but yeah.
At least you're aware of it. No, really good tip. I like that one. And brings us to your last one. What would be your number 10?
Number 10 would be to think to the future, forward think, make sure there's room to move. Life changes, things change, you change. If you build, buy, or whatever for right now, it can sort of limit what you do with your future. And buying a home isn't cheap. If you bought a house now and then a year later you have triplets and you've got a 1-bedroom apartment, you have to go and buy and sell again, and there's all those fees that come with buying and selling.
Yeah.
It's just easy to just think about, like with us, like I said before, it's a modest size home. It's not huge, but, it's definitely a good size for us. It would fit easily a couple of kids in like 50 years' time when we're ready, all of that. So, but it would also, one person would be comfortable in here, or someone with a housemate or whatever, like it just sort of accommodates. So yeah, I think that's really important when you're buying, building, or upsizing or downsizing or whatever. Just make sure that there's, you are thinking about your ifs and buts as well.
No, that's awesome, Dave. Thank you so much for sharing that top 10. And I want to ask you, in this journey, if you reflect back, I know these are your top 10, what would have made it easier? Is there anything you think would have made it super easy that if you had this particular tool, it might have helped, or anything like that?
There's always one thing that comes to mind, but I know that it's very out of reach and probably won't happen. But honestly, I would have I really do wish that this was something that was taught in schools. I don't know how many times I've said it, just to have that education, that I wish, that's fantastic. I know the square root of pi, awesome, don't use it. But I don't know what taxes are. I don't know, going into this, it could have really gone belly up. Like the amount of things that could have gone wrong because we were going into this blind, young, dumb, inexperienced. I really do. I would have loved to seen this in school curriculum, or at the very least a crash course in home ownership, in borrowing and lending, some kind of education around it, other than having to rely on Instagram. You rely on your parents who there's a lot of us who have parents who have never bought. Some parents have only ever rented and that's it. So they can't offer advice. So again, you're on your own and you have to rely on people that may or may not have your best interests at heart, and you could, be led down a path that gets you in trouble kind of thing. If you borrow too much and land yourself in debt or whatever. Yeah, I do. I think education is a big part of it. So to make our journey easier. Would have loved if there was some form of education available for young adults.
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Well, like I say, very far-fetched.
No, not far-fetched. Look, you never know what's in the plans for the future, and I think it's a really important one, and definitely I think if we had that in schools, it would be making a big difference in our lives as adults. So last thing here, you've moved in, obviously, you've lived the experience and you've lived to tell the tale. You're building your family with your fur babies. How do you feel now that it's all sort of said and done?
Overall, I'm really glad we did it. We are comfortable, we're happy, we're less stressed compared to living in a rental where you've got to wait on other people. It was worth it in the end. Yeah, I just can't get over how it's like the dust has settled almost. It's like doing a bunch of burnouts in the desert and there's dust everywhere and you can't see anything and it's a mess. And then everything settles and you're like, oh, pretty landscape. Pretty much that's the metaphor for how things are at the moment.
I love that. Thank you, too.
Continue to be that way.
Well, there are some awesome tips here, and I love the top 10 things you noted. They're all super important and really valuable when you're about to enter the market. So just to recap, number 1, invest in a good broker. Make sure you gel with them well and that they're experienced with good results. Number 2, fixed versus variable rates. Understand them. Number 3, your borrowing power. Number 4, look at more than just the street name when picking your home. And number 5, read your damn contract like a million times. Number 6, trust your gut. You might not have done this before, but your gut will tell you something's not right, so listen to it. Number 7, think about FAD versus investment. Number 8, understand LVR and LMI. Number 9, apparently fence and nature strip disputes are not a council, police or legal matter, so make sure you research that. And number 10, think to the future and make sure there's some room to move for things that life throw at you. What will add value to your home? So those are some really awesome tips. And Dee, I want to thank you once again for being on the No BS podcast today. It's been great having you share your experience and story with us. And I look forward to keeping up with your journey. You can check out Dee's story on our website and her top 10 things she wished she knew before she bought a home. Dee, thanks once again. It's been funny and great as usual.
Thanks, Jo. Thanks for having me.
Now it's time for our weekly contributor, Purple Pingers, with the latest No BS story.
Thanks, Jo. Hello and welcome to Shit Rentals of Australia. It's me, your friend Jordan, and I hate the world. This episode we'll be discussing 657 Ballina Road in Goonellabah. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but that's how it's spelt. And you wouldn't know that because the real estate agency is actually too afraid to list the actual address on realestate.com. But if we look at the pictures, it looks like you can pay the exact same price as you would for a 2-bedroom apartment in Melbourne's CBD with a gym and a sauna to instead live in someone's garage in fucking far north New South Wales. This place comes complete with the smallest fridge you've ever seen in your goddamn life, the most disgusting polished concrete floor you've ever seen, and an oven that doesn't look like it's plugged in. There's also 2 fucking bunk beds, and once again, all in someone's garage. There's no closet or anything, and I'm pretty sure it's illegal to lodge 4 people in a garage, but hey, look, welcome to renting in Australia. I'll be crying myself to sleep. Back to you, Jo.
You've been listening to the No BS Real Estate Podcast. Did you know we're building a home buyers community to give Australians a better way to find their humble abode? Sign up now and we'll send your first home buyers checklist straight to your inbox by visiting www.abodi.com.au so you can say buying your home was the easiest thing you've ever done. Thanks for listening.